Good morning. How is everybody doing today? Hope you're doing well and had a great 4th of July weekend. What an amazing time it was last night, whether you watched fireworks on TV or you got to see them outside your window or from your car somewhere. It was the first holiday that I felt like that we could celebrate through the quarantine. It's been difficult to gather friends and stuff like that, but I felt the whole United States was celebrating the freedoms we do have, the freedoms that people have fought for in our lives. And so I had a great time. I hope you did too. And thank you again for welcoming us in your living room or your car or wherever you are listening to this today, because we know how much it means to us that you are a part of our lives. And so we are grateful for joining you every Sunday at 10 o'clock. It's been a great time and we are enjoying it. We have been talking about one of the things that we've given you as an example to think about is setting the thermostat in a room. If you know, you can go to the wall or you can have it on your phone as an app and say, I want to set the temperature in the room to 72, which seems kind of perfect. And we've talked about how in our lives we have the ability to set that thermostat, to set the environment, if you will. So when you walk in the room, you have the ability to greet people with a smile, which creates another smile and another smile. It's a ripple effect. How you treat others is sometimes reciprocated from them, and they go, wow, that really meant a lot to me. And then the room develops this energy of love and gratitude. And I just believe that it is important to set the thermostat in the room and to understand that kind of has it has a great power in it of making a difference, if you will. One of the things I want to talk about today is when you enter a room, it's important. But when you leave the room, it's just as important how you left the room. And we're going to go over a scripture that most of you know. This one is found in Philippians 4:8. So if you want to write it down or remember it for later, just ponder it. And it says that whatever is true and honest and just and pure and lovely and of good report, that's what we're supposed to be thinking about. And when we do that, it changes our environment within us, our mind, our heart, everything that about us. When we start thinking about good, we start feeling better. We even develop a smile, just a cheery disposition. We decide to do something even greater that day because we thought of it. And I think that's really cool for our health. Something to think about is when you're in an environment and you think of good, it changes you. But you're thinking, how can I change the thermostat and leave it that way? By thinking good of others. Because the thing is when God created the world, he created us. After he was finished, he said, it is good. So therefore, if it was good what he created, every person has good in them. And when we think of good, not only in things and beauty and nature and flowers and trees, whatever makes you smile, we need to see the same thing in a person, because there is good in everybody. And I know it sounds impossible with some, but it's not. It's our job to look at it this way. It's our job to be a servant for others. It's easy for us to find good for us and for our health. But then when you start thinking others, you have to become a servant. And that is what creates not only a wonderful environment, but it keeps it. So think of it again. When you're visiting somebody, to draw out what's good in them, listen and develop a relationship with them, and through that conversation that shows the good, that shows the honest, the pure, and then you let them see what you saw. You say, It's just simple things like, wow, you have a great sense of style, to you have a great sense of hospitality. Have you ever you have somebody in your mind that walks into a room, and when they came in and when they left, they go, gosh, I needed that energy. But what if you were that energy? And when you're the energy of a servant, you do create that, and you leave with that, and people feel it, and they carry that throughout their week. So when we are asked to spread the good news of it's meeting where they're at, not just where you're at. And that's a part of drawing out the good, seeing that good in somebody, and developing a relationship with them to show them you saw it. And when you leave, they're going to, wow, I'm filled up, I have energy, and I feel good. So today, not only remember, the truth is there is good in everybody and everything, just like I said. But when you enter a place and you exit, we'll make it the same energy, the same amount of energy. So have a good day, you guys, and be that what changes, makes a difference. So set your thermostat and keep it at that level of perfect 72. Have a good day, you guys.
Well, good morning. It's again always humbling to be allowed to be in your life right now, and those of you that are tuning in and listening, and as I say so often, every week there are those that will tune in later and rewatch the feed. Obviously won't be live, but it's a chance where you can share the video with others if you would like. And we've tried through this experience to maintain just a level of, I hope what you have seen, our desire has been, is to maintain a level of excellence. Excellence because, again, just like Leah was talking about, those are things that we're supposed to be thinking about. Those are the things that we're supposed to be pondering. And that's not to say that with news and the media and everything that's going on in the world that you're not supposed to tune in. That is not at all what the implication is. But the implication is that we do filter the information that we have through the realities of what our brain processes. And again, not everything that's being said out there is 100% accurate, as I know we all are talking about. And that doesn't matter if we're talking about the current pandemic, or I'm hearing about the most recent thing that I saw is that if you wear a mask, then you're not a Trump supporter, and if you don't wear a mask, then you're not a Biden supporter. And I kind of shook my head and I said, come on, guys, really? I want to just, again, come to a point in my life where I realize what is important. And so for me, that's always constantly going back to the inner man, if you will, who I am characteristically, in the sense of how I'm going to manage my feelings about this. And people can trigger us. There's no question about that. But it's our responsibility on how to come back from that and not just be mad and aggressive, but to calm ourselves and to take a moment to really think through what it is that's happening. And again, the one thing that I just keep feeling is, for me, essential that I come back to is, what is my heart saying? And what is it that I believe? And what are my beliefs telling me about what I believe is going on in the larger picture, in the grand masterpiece, if you will? And last week we ended off talking about ingredients, and I shared with you a little bit about our family's love for cooking and a small kitchen that we're in. And I made a comment, and I intentionally did not go back to that comment because I wanted to kind of start off with that today. And that is, the comment that I made is inevitably when we cook in our kitchen, because our kitchen is small and because of our great love for cooking and everybody in the family being a part of that, one of the statements that I made last week is inevitably we're going to bump into each other. Not because we're mad, not because we're aggressive, not because we're trying to take control in the kitchen. It's just there's a small space, and in a small space, inevitably you're going to bump into each other. I know this is a big world, but the world seems to be getting smaller and smaller. And what we're seeing right now is we're seeing people bump into each other. How do we respond when we bump into each other? How are we going to react? One of the other things that I mentioned is that one of the best ways to have the best food is to have the freshest ingredients. If you're walking around with rotten eggs and you bump into somebody, there's going to be a stench if one of those rotten eggs gets broken. And by the way, I would just ask, what are you doing cooking with rotten eggs? None of us want to do those kind of things. We want to take the freshest ingredients and apply the freshest ingredients to our lives. And I want to think about that a little bit today and allow this moment, as Leah was already talking about, how we complement one another. When you walk into a room, and I understand we're back again to the small group settings. There's been some new information about church guidelines that have actually become even stricter than what they were. And we're all kind of looking at, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And first of all, I would say, let's calm down. And I'm not saying that you're overreacting. I'm not with you right now, and so I don't know if you're throwing things at me into the screen that you're looking. But what I'm simply saying is that we need to walk through this calmly. And so me telling you to calm down is not to chide you or to correct you, but just like Leah said, I love what the verse says. It says, think. I don't know how many times growing up on a farm, I would have my grandfather, my father, my mother, whoever it was, but they would look at me and say, John, just stop and think. There's something about being called upon to think. Because our brains process random information, but when we focus, there it is again, when we pay attention, when we really force our minds to begin to grapple with what is being said by the Spirit about what's happening in the world around us, there are things that I believe that we not only need to meditate on, but we need to reflect. And I believe that one of the greatest things that we can do is compliment one another. Taking time just to say, you look good. You make a difference in my life. Don't always, like Leah was talking about, don't always be the one that walks into a room and hopes you get noticed. Be the one that walks into a room and notices. Be the one that walks into the room and says, there's Siri responding to us right now. Sorry about that. But be the one that walks into the room and notices the environment and then decides with all the power that you can muster, not only, like Leah said, not only am I going to set the thermostat to be a healthy, happy environment, but when I leave, I want to see that atmosphere linger. The atmosphere linger. I was thinking about some things, and I was thinking about just rituals that we have in our household. And one of the things I was thinking about as I was reading some things is for us, Wednesday night, we have kind of a Wednesday night ritual in our home. I don't know when this is for you, but the reason we have a Wednesday night ritual is because Thursday morning is trash day. And so Wednesday night ritual becomes this moment where all of us go throughout the house, and we go into the bathrooms, we go into the kitchen, we go into the areas that we have trash bins, and we make sure that we get all of those trash bins empty. We take that trash out on Wednesday night. Our trash guy comes pretty early in the morning. We're one of the first pickups. And so if you forget to do it on Wednesday night, then all of a sudden you wake up with this horrid look on your face of, oh no, we didn't take the trash out. Usually it's me running around in my PJs and winding up outside barefoot trying to haul out the bins to the side of the road. It's important to get rid of trash. And I want you to stop and think about maybe a new ritual that you and I need to put into our life. How much stuff do we carry around in our beings, in our framework of thought, that have lingered maybe too long? You know as well as I do that trash that's not emptied regular starts to smell pretty bad. And so it takes due diligence on our part physically to rid our households of trash. But don't you agree, isn't it important for us to examine the trash that may linger or has existed inside of our spirit, inside of our minds, inside of who we are? I remember reading a book a number of years ago, and I loved one of the statements that it said. It said that all useless baggage in our lives needs to be jettisoned. It needs to be gotten rid of. We were not designed to carry garbage. We were not designed to carry things that were never meant for us to carry. That's why we have an awesome healer. That's why we have one that God's word says that we can go to him because he understands our frame. He understands everything about us. And we are called to cast all of our anxiety on him because he cares for us. How do you do that? I mean, how do we rid ourselves of anxiety? I mean, if we're honest, there are things that we get worked up about. Well, I believe there are some keys of what we are going to look at as we talk about how to find a way to get rid of anxiety, to get rid of things that maybe don't need to be there. And I want to just start off by thinking about this. What are the origins that cause disorder? And again, you know, I like to read and I like to write. I like to journal. I like to think about things. I like to have conversations with people. I have some of my best conversations with friends, and just I think about the value of again, human interaction. And I understand right now that we're missing some of that to a certain degree that we are not used to. But at least we have ways that we can still communicate. Can you imagine having to go through this in the 80s where we didn't have any type of tech like this? How much more we would feel isolated and alone. And so there are things to be thankful for. And right now I'm thankful for my crazy iPhone. I'm thankful for a little tripod that was again allowed to be used by the Millers. I'm thankful for a microphone that a friend Ron purchased so that you could hear us better. And there's little things that if I stop and think about it, and you may think, well, that's not a very big deal, but you know what? It's the little things that really do make a big deal, because when you are thankful even for the little things, you find that you're overall just thankful. It doesn't take, winning the lottery. Never happened for me. And yet I find I'm thankful. There's things that I can be grateful for. But when we talk about origins of disorder, like I was saying, if you know me, I like to go to the root. And I believe that God gets to say what the root of things are. We get to dialogue about it, and we can give our opinions. But ultimately, God is not concerned so much with our opinions as he is about our obedience. And I know that resonates with all of us. But I was thinking about the origins of disorder. And I want you to listen carefully as it's found in James chapter 3. And it just simply says, wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. Wow. Again, God gets to weigh in on this. This is not my opinion. And we can read this and go, okay, what was James saying when he was writing this? This was a man that was writing about this, being directed and inspired about what he was written by God. And he just nails this right down. And he says, when we're talking about the origins of disorder, wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. If that's true, and I'm going to just do some math here, and so I'm going to assume that it's true. The math being, if God said it, 2 + 2 is 4. If that's true, then what we see that's going on in the world, we need to be careful, because there is some motivation that is jealous and selfishly applied through the ambitions that are being directed in this time. Now, we want to often pick sides. Let's just be honest. That's us. That's in our human nature. We want to gravitate towards what is right. The challenge is when we don't know what's right. I have been, you have been, where people have been in your life, and I'm not talking about media, I'm not talking about right now, I'm just talking about history. But you and I have been lied to. And we know what it feels like when the lie is uncovered. We feel betrayed. We feel like we can't trust, because we were believing this individual, but then we found out they were lying. And so when we look at what's going on in the world today and we kind of apply that same model, we know that there are people that are lying right now. But the problem is we're trying to find out what's right. Guys, for me, it has been to try to stay focused on what I know is right. And what I know is right is I keep going back to, what does God say? When I'm talking with my family, when I'm talking with you, we keep going over these things. We talk about goodness and we talk about excellence. And the reason we talk about those things is because you know when it's excellent. You know when it's good. You know when there is rightness. The Bible calls that righteousness. James goes on to say, after talking about where you'll find disorder and evil every kind, he goes on to say, he says, but the wisdom from above, and this is what's awesome, because how can you know what's right? Here it is. Wisdom from above is first of all pure. It loves peace. It loves love. He goes on to say it's gentle at all times. And then he puts in a powerful statement, and willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And then he goes on to say this. So listen, this is for us. Are you ready for it? Those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and will reap a harvest of rightness. Again, the word in Scripture is righteousness. It's the same word, rightness. I want to stand for what's right. You know, I was analyzing some things then in respect to this in my life, and realized that there's kind of a topic that we don't talk a lot about. It's very much there in Scripture, but it's not always something that we, just, oh, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today. And so I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the nature of myself, and I'm a wanter. Now, I have good wants, but sometimes I have unhealthy wants. Sometimes I have wants for things that just, I don't really need them. I want it. It's kind of like right now, I would love to be able to sit down with a great big bowl of Captain Crunch cereal. Now, I can do it, but I'm going to pay the price the rest of the day because my body can't handle the sugar. My body can't handle the corn. My body doesn't handle the milk very well. And so when we talk about this simple illustration, what is it that is keeping me from getting what I want when it comes to Captain Crunch? Well, it's commitment. It's commitment to be content. What can I have? I can have eggs. I can have bacon. I can have things that maybe some of you can't have. But contentment is just understanding that what we have is enough. And so the writer of Hebrews, moving to another place, he said this. He said, let your conduct be without covetousness. And that's that word that I said we don't talk a lot about. It's clearly there, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about it. And a lot of times when we think about covetousness, we often think of it in the spiritual sense, or in, when it's being taught about, we think about, oh yeah, we're not supposed to want our neighbor's wife, or we're not supposed to want our neighbor's, the way their family is, or we start longing for things and we kind of take it to, this mega, if you will, value, instead of breaking it down to, could there be covetousness in my life? And at the micro level, what is covetousness doing to me? And how is that hindering me or hurting me? And again, covetousness is just wanting things that maybe aren't healthy, but it doesn't even have to be that they're unhealthy. It can just be things that you're over-focused on. Another word that Scripture would talk about would be idolatry. But again, when we use that word, we start thinking of statues and we start thinking of things that, has been done throughout different times. But again, it's just, I believe at the micro level, we need to be scrutinous. Because if we're not careful, we can want the wrong things. So let me give you an example for me. How much do I want to really spend time praying, reading my Bible, talking to God, thinking about good things, versus just being mindless and watching Netflix, getting caught up in who knows what? What we genuinely value finds time in our schedule. And I really want to encourage us in this process that we're in this world. We need to start devoting probably a little bit more time to things that are valuable. Things that are, again, as Leah pointed out, excellent, worthy of our praise, worthy of our time. And so when the writer of Hebrews was writing, he said, let your conduct be without covetousness. And then he goes on to say this, be content with such things as you have. And then he says this powerful statement, for he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? When the writer of Hebrews brings up contentment, he reminds us, again, the writer of Hebrews is now quoting a verse from the Old Testament. And he reminds us what it says. And he says, he himself, speaking of God, has promised, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. The Lord is my helper. Guys, can you imagine how powerful it is when we grow content with what we do have? What we do have when it comes to this nature of God is a promise that we're never alone. I know through this journey, some of us feel alone and feel isolated, and we feel just a longing to see somehow to navigate through this to where we can move forward. But we can have confidence to know that we're never alone. I was reading something and it just caught my attention. It says, when a believer knows the will of God, yet intentionally chooses their own desires instead, that is what is idolatry. That hit me. He goes on to write, he says, they have chosen to worship their desires over God. It's important that we examine ourselves. It's important that we focus on how important it is on not just what we say, but what we think. What are the driving forces behind the words that we speak? I was thinking of my dad, and my dad likes to play an app game that is on his phone. I believe it's cross-platform, but I believe it's called Words with Friends. Many of you have played a game probably in your life just called Scrabble. And one of the things that, if you know the game, what you do is that somebody that can have the biggest number of letters, tiles that are used in Scrabble, that's the person that gets to start off. And the goal is that from that one word alone, then you build off of that word with the letters that you have in your tile rack. And same with Word with Friends. You're waiting for someone online to put a word in a crossword space, and hopefully you can put one on that matches off of some of those letters that are there so that you can develop words. And again, going back to Scrabble, one of the things that's exciting is when all of your letters finally get you to where you get a triple word score, or you get a double letter score, and all these things that help build up the momentum and the point value, so in the end, hopefully you win. But we know this. In Scrabble, there's one winner. And you can have some great words, but it doesn't mean that you're going to win. Fashion your words in your life that you come out a winner. Focus on what you attend to and therefore what you speak. Matthew, Jesus was talking, and he's just been accused. He's done an amazing miracle, and he's taken someone that has been challenged for so long, and he heals this young boy. And then the religious leaders say, the only reason that he can do this is because he works with Beelzebub. He works in league with the prince of demons. And Jesus then starts talking about words, and he talks about what happens when we don't stop and think about our words. And in Matthew 12, he says, whatever is in your heart determines what you say. And then he goes on to say, and he says, a good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart. I'll say that again. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart. What's in your treasury? What is it that is there? And he goes on to say, he says, I tell you this, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. Careless words that we speak. And then he says this, he says, the words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. Man, I want to stand and be acquitted. And so I want to make sure I'm careful. You have the power today, tomorrow, throughout this process to say the right words. And the best way we say the right words is if we embrace life calmly, we focus, we listen. Another area in Scripture, be quick to listen, slow to speak. Let's not be reactionary, just things that we've talked about. Let's ponder and process and meditate. And when we do speak, let our words be seasoned with grace as with salt. I mean, we know when something tastes good because of the right seasonings. And people in this world are longing for you to season this world with goodness, with grace, with a life that's lived circumspectly, with hope. I want to go back to my original illustration that I opened with when I talked about Wednesday night ritual being, again, getting prepared for trash day. Now I want to just wrap up with this. Have you ever seen, and I know in California where we live, that there are certain laws that prohibit, if you read on your trash can, it probably says something about, the trash that's out on the side by the sidewalk is not to just be squandered through, and people aren't supposed to be going, dumpster diving or anything like that. I mean, that's what it says. But I want you to just pause and think with me for a second, because I think this is important for us to think about as we wrap this up together. Have you ever seen a trash can guarded? Like, we're going to hire security to make sure that the trash doesn't go anywhere? It's trash. And so we put out in receptacles unguarded trash. And the reason is because it doesn't have any value. Now, I've heard it said, one man's trash is another person's treasure. I'm not going to apply that principle in what we're talking about. But my point is this, are there things that we're holding on to, that we're guarding, that needs to just be set aside? And not worry about when the trash man gets rid of it. You value and you guard what is most important. And so I made a comment, and this has been something that is just, I read it almost on a daily basis because it helps me. And I hope it helps you. But the writer of Proverbs in chapter 4, in fact, if you look at the title and the heading of what Proverbs 4 is it says counsel from a father. And I think about this with my kids and the people that I'm responsible for when I'm talking and trying to encourage. And I think about how important it is to listen to our fathers and to listen to our mothers and the guidance that they give. And so in Proverbs 4, there's a father that's giving counsel to his son. And then later on in the chapter, he simply says this. He says, guard your heart above all else. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, and it goes on to say, for it determines the course of your life. So here's a father in Proverbs 4 saying all of these great things to his son about, be careful about this and think about this and do this and all these different things. But then as he gets towards the end of his conversation, he says, guard your heart above all else. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Solomon doesn't say, and if you think about it, make sure you do something for your heart. He doesn't open up by saying, hey, son, you might want to. And he doesn't say things like, by the way. He emphasizes it. Above all else, guard your heart. As I have read that over and over and now have it memorized, my daily reminder for all of us is, above all else, guard your heart. There's a lot going on in the world, and we all have mixed feelings. Those feelings are valid. Your experience, where you're at in your life, the hurt, the challenges, I don't doubt and will not try to undermine that they're real. But maybe some of those things that have hurt us we can let go of. Maybe some of the stuff can just be set out on the curb for someone to get rid of it for us. Not to have to go back and think about it all over again. My principal in school used to always say, the heart of the matter is the heart. Denny Taylor, I don't know how many times he would sit down with me and we'd talk through things. I would listen. He would listen. And I remember he would look at me and say, the heart of the matter is the heart. Protect your heart, guys. Love like never before. Do good to one another because we need each other. Guys, I love you, and I hope today you'll find that last night's celebration of the United States of America, the birth of a great nation, however you celebrated it, we have the freedom to talk about what we're talking about right now. We have the freedom to encourage one another. And there is good in this world. And as we seek for peace and pursue it, we know God is with us. Have a great day. We love you.